Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. I was brushing my teeth when the power cut out. That in itself wasn't unusual. My apartment loses electricity every time someone sneezes too hard in the building. But the timing was weird. It was just after 7 a.m. I hadn't even finished rinsing when I heard something hit my door. Not a knock, more like a soft tap, then the sound of something sliding under. I opened the door, half expecting a flyer, a bill, maybe a warning from the landlord about the power outage. Instead, there was a white envelope. No name, no return address. Just one sentence written across the front in faded black ink. Open this. You'll understand why. I didn't pick it up immediately. I stared at it, like it might burn me, or explode, because I knew that handwriting. Even in the dim light of the hallway, I'd recognize that loop on the Y anywhere. Melanie, my ex-wife. And just like that, my entire body went cold. I hadn't heard her name out loud in over a year. Hadn't seen her since the last time she stood across from me in court, blank-faced and beautiful, nodding at the judge while my hands shook like I was testifying at my own funeral. I left the envelope on the floor for hours. I stepped over it on my way to the kitchen, ate dry cereal while pretending it wasn't there. I sat on the couch, scrolling through job listings, wondering how I still hadn't found work since the layoff 2 months ago. But my eyes kept darting to the door like it was staring back. Finally, around noon, I gave in. I peeled it open like it might bleed. Inside wasn't a letter. It was a photograph. One single photograph, printed on cheap glossy paper. I turned it over. And there, written on the back in that same familiar handwriting, were just 5 words. This is where it began. I looked at the photo again, and everything in me caved in. It was my living room. The couch I threw out after the split. The rug I donated. And on that couch, clear as day, was her, Melanie, in one of my old t-shirts. And next to her, half turned toward the camera, holding a wine glass, was someone I knew. Someone I had trusted. Someone who had been in my life a lot longer than I realized. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. You ever stare at something so long, hoping it's not what it seems, only to realize the truth is worse than anything you imagined? That was me, holding that photo, palms sweaty, trying to find any reason, any excuse to believe it was fake. A prank. Some sick joke. But the couch was mine. The shirt she wore was definitely mine. And the man sitting next to her, hand on her thigh, face slightly turned but unmistakable, was my brother. I didn't even know how long I sat there staring at it. My mouth was dry, and my thoughts raced in 1,000 directions at once. My brother, Dean. The same brother who helped me move out after the divorce. The same guy who swore he never liked her that much and always warned me she was too cold. And yet, here he was, in my old home, with my ex-wife, smiling like he belonged there. Like it was his place all along. I flipped the photo again, reading those 5 words over and over. This is where it began. What the hell did that mean? Began when? Before the divorce? During? Was this her confession? Her apology? Her way of twisting the knife one more time? I sat with it until my legs went numb. Part of me wanted to call Dean right then and there, scream at him, demand answers, demand the truth. But the other part, the weaker part, I guess, couldn't stomach hearing his voice. Not yet. I felt sick, humiliated. The one thing worse than your wife cheating is realizing the betrayal started long before you even suspected, and it came from both of them. People you trusted. People who shared your holidays, your table, your grief. I put the photo back in the envelope and shoved it in the drawer next to a pile of old takeout menus. I couldn't look at it anymore. I just paced the room for hours, trying to remember everything. Every weird moment, every excuse she gave, every time Dean came over and left too quickly or lingered too long. The puzzle pieces didn't just fall into place, they hit me like bricks. Around 8 p.m., I got a second knock on the door. I froze. Same soft tap as before. I opened it slowly, and this time, there was no one there. Just another envelope. Same handwriting. My hands were shaking as I opened it, heart pounding so hard it felt like it echoed off the walls. This time, it was a note. Short. 2 sentences. I'm not doing this for me. I just think you deserve to know how deep it went. Taped to the note was a receipt from a hotel dated 9 months before we split. The guest names? Melody Whitmore and Dean Whitmore. 1 king bed. 3 nights. And that was the moment I stopped wondering if it was real. I didn't sleep. I didn't even lie down. I just sat at my kitchen table all night, replaying every moment I'd ever spent around them. Family dinners, vacations, lazy Sundays. Each memory felt contaminated now. The laughter, the inside jokes, even the photos on my phone, they were all lying to me. I wasn't mourning a single betrayal anymore. I was mourning an entire reality that had been false for God knows how long. By sunrise, I made up my mind. I was going to his place. I had no plan, no speech, no idea what I'd say, but I had to look him in the eyes. Dean lived just 20 minutes across town, in a condo he'd bragged about buying back when I was still married. I used to help him fix things around the place. Once installed his dishwasher while Melody waited in the car. I remember thinking it was odd she didn't come inside. Now it made sense. Everything made sense. When I pulled into his driveway, my hands were shaking so badly, I turned the ignition off twice before finally stepping out. I rang the bell and immediately regretted not texting first. But it was too late. I heard footsteps. Then the door opened, and there he was, wearing a t-shirt I recognized from a camping trip we took 4 years ago, looking like he'd just rolled out of bed. He blinked a few times, then stepped aside without saying a word, like he knew exactly why I was there. I walked past him into his living room. That was when I saw it. The framed photo on his coffee table. It wasn't even hidden. It was them, Melody and Dean, standing in front of a cabin somewhere, arms wrapped around each other like a couple on vacation. I pointed to it, barely able to breathe. "How long, Dean?" I asked. My voice cracked like it had splintered from inside me. "How long were you two laughing behind my back?" He didn't even look at the photo. Just dropped onto the couch and sighed like he was tired of the whole thing. Like he was the victim. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he mumbled. "You two were already falling apart." She was lonely. I was around. One night turned into two. I didn't plan it. "You didn't plan it?" I said louder now. "You shared blood with me, and you didn't plan not to destroy my life." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, like a therapist trying to show empathy. "You were too soft for her, Gar. Everyone saw it. You kept trying to fix things that were already broken. She needed someone stronger." I laughed. I actually laughed. It was either that or cry right there in front of him. Stronger? You mean more selfish? More gutless? Someone who cheats behind his own brother's back? Dean didn't flinch. "We didn't tell you because we didn't want to hurt you. But you would have found out eventually. She wanted to come clean months before the divorce. I told her not to." I just stood there, looking at a man I no longer recognized. My brother. My best man at the wedding. My literal blood. And he sat there, justifying it all like it was a scheduling error. I didn't hit him. I didn't yell. I didn't even curse. I just turned and walked out. But as I reached the door, he called out behind me. "She's not over you, you know." I stopped. He added, "She still talks about you when she's drunk. Says you were the only one who ever really loved her." I didn't respond. I just walked back to my car, heart pounding in my ears. That night, I would learn that his words weren't just some manipulative guilt trip. Because later that evening, a third envelope arrived. And this time, it held something far more disturbing than a photo. I got home from Dean's place feeling like I'd aged 10 years. My face in the bathroom mirror looked pale, sunken. I hadn't eaten all day, but the thought of food made my stomach twist. I took the photo and the hotel receipt out of the drawer again and laid them on the table like evidence in a cold case. My hands hovered over them like I could somehow squeeze out a different truth. But there was no other version of reality anymore. Just betrayal, wrapped in silence and sealed with my brother's smug indifference. I kept replaying what he said on my way out. "She still talks about you when she's drunk." That sentence messed with my head more than anything else. I wanted to hate her. I should have hated her. But a part of me still ached for answers. Closure. Justice. Something. That evening, just as the sun was setting, I heard the now all too familiar soft tap on my door. No knock. Just a quiet thud, like guilt itself had learned how to deliver mail. I opened it, and there it was, the third envelope. Plain white. No markings. The handwriting this time was different. It wasn't Melody's. It was typed. My stomach sank deeper than I thought possible. I closed the door, slid the bolt, and sat down with the envelope in front of me like it might contain a bomb. And in a way, it did. I opened it carefully, expecting another photo, maybe another receipt. But this time, what spilled out was a folded legal-sized paper. At first glance, I thought it was some kind of medical record. But as I read it, my skin went cold. It was a copy of a notarized affidavit. A statement from a woman named Marlene Jacobs, someone I'd never heard of. The title read, Sworn Statement Regarding Incident at 407 Crestline Drive. That was my old address. The date on the paper was from 10 months before the divorce. My hands trembled as I read. Marlene claimed she had been hired as a house cleaner for a single visit at our home. She said she arrived early one morning and was told by the lady of the house to let herself in through the back door because they'd be upstairs. She said she heard laughter from the second floor, followed by a man's voice, one she recognized. It was Dean. She'd cleaned his condo before and remembered him clearly. But what shook me to my core wasn't her recognizing him. It was what she saw. She said she left early, without cleaning, because what she witnessed was not something she wanted to be part of. She ended the letter by saying she was only speaking up now because she saw him recently at a party bragging about how he'd stolen a wife and a house and didn't even have to say sorry. And then, stapled behind her statement, was a copy of a check. A check from Melody's account to Marlene, dated the same day, for $500. Memo line, consulting. The moment I saw it, I dropped the papers like they were on fire. I leaned against the wall, sliding down to the floor, breathing like I'd just run a marathon I didn't sign up for. This wasn't just an affair anymore. This was a planned, orchestrated invasion of my life, of my home, of my trust. Melody hadn't just lied to me. She'd paid someone off to keep their little secret hidden. And for what? For convenience? To ease her guilt? Or to buy time until I walked away on my own? For the first time since all this began, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt violated. Like my own memories had been weaponized against me. That house I once cherished, it had been converted into a crime scene behind my back. And that's when I realized something even worse. The envelopes weren't meant to hurt me. They were preparing me, because something else was coming. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the floor next to the envelope, too angry to cry, too alert to rest. It was a strange kind of silence in the apartment, like the air itself was holding its breath. I kept thinking about the cleaning lady, Marlene. I still couldn't wrap my head around how random strangers knew more about my life than I did. She saw them. She heard them. And rather than run to me, she was paid to disappear. $500 to vanish the truth like dust on a windowsill. Around 6:30 in the morning, I finally stood up, knees cracking under the weight of the past 12 hours. I opened the blinds, made the weakest cup of coffee known to man, and stared out the window like something was going to change. I hadn't even taken the first sip when I heard the knock. Not the soft tap this time. A knock. 2 sharp ones. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed not to answer it. But I did. And standing there, drenched from the morning rain, was a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, thin, hair pulled back tight, dark circles under her eyes. She didn't say anything for a moment. Just stared at me like I was a museum exhibit. "Are you Garland?" she finally asked. I nodded. She exhaled sharply, then stepped forward and pressed something into my hand. A flash drive, cold and damp. She asked me to give this to you. But I waited. I wanted to be sure she meant it. I looked down at the drive. "Who asked you?" Her eyes narrowed. "Melody. But I'm not doing this for her anymore. I'm doing it for you." Before I could ask another question, she turned and walked off like she'd already said too much. I stood in the doorway like a stunned idiot, holding the drive like it was a live wire. My heart pounded. My palms sweated. But I didn't wait. I went straight to my laptop and plugged it in. There were 2 files. One was a video. The other was a folder labeled "Read This First." Inside were half a dozen text documents, letters, journal entries, and one scanned document that looked like a legal agreement. The first file I opened was a short letter titled, "To Garland, if I never see you again." I read it once, then again, and then a third time because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Melody had written that she never wanted things to happen the way they did. She admitted to the affair, admitted to lying, even to bribing Marlene, but said that Dean had convinced her from the start that I would never fight for her, that I was too passive to hold on to her. He made her feel like she was missing out on something bigger, something bolder. And she believed him. She said Dean was charming, confident, and knew how to push all the right buttons. But then came the confession that hit me like a hammer to the chest. She said he threatened her. Not with violence. With exposure. With twisting the narrative. If she didn't stay with him after the divorce, he'd tell everyone she was unstable, that she cheated with half the office. She claimed she wanted to leave him months ago, but he had something on her, something she wasn't ready to admit. Not yet. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Everything suddenly shifted again. Was I wrong? Had I misjudged everything? Or was this just another manipulation layered inside the last one? I didn't even realize my hand was hovering over the video file. That's when I heard a noise from outside my door. Not a knock. A voice. A man's voice. Dean. And he wasn't alone. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. The moment I heard his voice in the hallway, Dean's voice, my entire body tensed like a trap ready to snap shut. I hadn't heard him since I walked out of his condo just the day before, and yet there he was again, like a ghost that refused to stay buried. At first, I thought he was talking to someone on the phone, but then I caught the second voice. Female. Quiet. Hesitant. And then I realized it was the same voice from earlier. The woman who gave me the flash drive. She hadn't just dropped it off. She was still here. With him. I crept toward the door, barely letting the floor creak beneath me. I didn't open it, didn't say a word. I just stood close enough to hear. Their voices were muffled but clear enough to catch every important word. She gave it to him? Dean asked. He sounded panicked. I told you I was done lying, she replied. You shouldn't have dragged me into this. You said you'd wait, he hissed. You said you'd let me handle it. You mean lie to him again? Gaslight him one more time. I've watched you twist everything for years, Dean. But this isn't about you anymore. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted out. I recognized the tone in her voice now. It wasn't guilt, it was freedom. Whatever hold Dean had over her, it was breaking. And she was choosing to finally speak. You have no idea what's on that drive, he snapped. You're going to ruin everything. No, she said softly. You already did that. Footsteps. Fast. Like someone walking away in frustration. Then a thud, maybe a slap against the wall, and finally silence. I waited a full 2 minutes before I opened the door. The hallway was empty, but I knew what I had to do now. I went back to the laptop, staring at the file I had ignored earlier, the video. My hand hovered over the mouse, hesitant. A part of me didn't want to know what was inside. I'd already been gutted from every direction, but I clicked anyway. The screen lit up. It was a grainy recording, the kind you get from a cheap home security cam or an old phone propped up on a table. The camera faced a living room couch, my old couch. And there sat Dean and Melody, laughing, drinking wine, kissing, then talking. What they said next will be etched into my brain forever. I think he suspects something, Melody said. He was quiet at dinner. He always gets that look when he's connecting dots. Dean laughed. Let him. You're halfway out the door already. Once we close on the house, it's done. Melody looked uncertain. I still feel bad. I mean, it's Garland. Dean rolled his eyes. Garland doesn't fight. He doesn't yell. He endures. That's what he does. He'll walk away with his tail tucked like always. You think he'll suddenly grow a backbone now? She looked down at her glass. I hope not. The video ended with them toasting, clinking glasses, smiling. It wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. Planned. Executed. Mocked. I closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long time, hands shaking in my lap. I'd been reduced to a predictable footnote in their story. A passive man. A stepping stone. An afterthought. But for the first time in over a year, I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel broken. I felt focused. They had written me off as harmless. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I didn't touch the laptop again for hours. Not because I was avoiding it, but because I'd already memorized every word. That video didn't just break me, it rewired me. I kept pacing my apartment, that final toast looping through my head like a curse. He doesn't fight. He doesn't yell. He endures. They were so sure of who I was, so smug in their assumptions. And maybe they were right, back then. But something had cracked inside me. I wasn't angry in the way they expected. I didn't want revenge in the dramatic, explosive sense. I didn't want to torch their car or go on a social media rant. What I wanted now was something cleaner, sharper, exposure. The first thing I did was copy every file on the flash drive, twice. One copy went to a secure cloud folder. The other to a cheap USB stick I'd bought at a gas station a few months ago. Then I printed out the transcript of the video. I didn't even bother editing it. Their words, unfiltered, printed on paper, felt heavier than any insult I could have thrown. The truth was doing all the work for me. Next, I called the one person who had stayed in my life through all of this. My cousin Eli. He was a paralegal, and though he usually stuck to boring real estate contracts, he was smart enough to know what to do. I didn't tell him everything over the phone. I just said I needed a favor and that I had some documentation that might make things very, very complicated for two people we both knew. He didn't hesitate. Told me to meet him that evening. Said he'd bring a contact of his, a lawyer who owed him one. That afternoon felt like walking through a dream where I finally had control. I kept flashing back to moments from the marriage. Things that used to confuse me now made sense. The mysterious charges on our joint card, the extra set of keys I could never find. Even the time Dean accidentally showed up to our anniversary dinner claiming he forgot it was our night. I used to explain those moments away, blaming stress or coincidence. But now I realized I had been narrating someone else's lie just to avoid hearing the truth echo back at me. When I got to Eli's office, he was already waiting with a woman named Lindsay. Sharp, professional, with the kind of expression that let you know she didn't suffer fools. I laid everything out. Every envelope, every letter, the affidavit from Marlene, the printed transcript, and finally, the flash drive itself. Lindsay read through it silently. She didn't interrupt. But when she finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked me dead in the eyes. "Do you want to ruin them?" she asked. I shook my head. "No. I want the truth to speak louder than their lies. I want the people around them to see who they really are. That's all." She nodded slowly. "We can make that happen." She explained things I hadn't even thought about. Dean's smug closing on the house line from the video. Turns out, he'd recently bought a property under an LLC. One Melody had secretly co-signed using forged documents from our old mortgage paperwork. That was fraud. Serious fraud. And Lindsay seemed almost excited about the legal implications. But here's the part one didn't expect. She didn't recommend court. She recommended leverage. Use the truth not as a sword, but as a spotlight. We drafted a letter. Not to Dean. Not to Melody. To the board members of the company where Dean worked. Attached was the video. The transcript. A breakdown of the fraudulent loan documents. And a request, not for damages, but for acknowledgement. I didn't need money. I didn't want headlines. I wanted them to know what kind of man represented their company. What kind of man manipulated his own brother, lied, cheated, and joked about it on camera. That letter would be mailed the next morning. And as I walked out of Eli's office into the night air, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. For the first time in a year. The letter went out on a Monday morning. I didn't expect to hear back. Honestly, I thought they'd bury it or toss it aside, maybe chalk it up to family drama. But by Thursday afternoon, Dean was out of a job. The company didn't issue a public statement, but I got a call from someone in HR, confidentially, off the record. They thanked me. Said that kind of behavior, once exposed, couldn't be ignored. The legal team was already preparing to open a formal review. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there, quietly stunned that telling the truth had actually worked. As for Melody, I didn't hear from her until the following week. It came as another letter. This time, not delivered by a stranger. Just regular mail. No games, no tricks. Her handwriting was still the same, but the tone had shifted. She said she knew what had happened with Dean. That he'd come home raging, blaming everyone but himself. She said he tried to convince her to spin the story, make me look vindictive, but she refused. She said she was finally done living in a web of lies she helped spin. She thanked me. That part caught me off guard. Not for the exposure, but for forcing her to face herself. She admitted she'd spent the last year looking over her shoulder, waiting for karma to find her. Said she never expected it to arrive in the form of a quiet envelope and a patient man. Then, at the bottom of the letter, she wrote something I never thought I'd see from her. "You were the only person who never used me. I'm sorry I mistook your softness for weakness." And that was the moment I knew I didn't need anything else from her. Not an apology. Not closure. I already had both. Because I had finally stopped carrying the weight of her choices. I had finally stopped blaming myself for what they did. I spent that weekend hiking in the Ozarks alone. No phone, no signal, just miles of trees and my own thoughts. Somewhere around the 4th mile, I stopped at a ridge, sat down, and smiled. Not because I'd won anything, but because I'd survived it. And somehow, I still like the man I'd become. I don't know what comes next. I'm not in a hurry to figure it out. But I do know this. I'm done being the guy who quietly endures. I speak up now. I draw lines. I protect my peace like it's sacred, because it is. And for anyone out there feeling like they're too soft, too broken, too far gone to recover, let me tell you something. The world may underestimate you. But one day, When you're ready, you'll stand up, tell the truth, and watch everything change. That's the end of our story, but the conversation's not over. What moment shocked you the most? Was it the third envelope, the video, or Melody's final words? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, this is Reddit Confessions, where every story is raw, real, and just a little too close to home. We'll see you in the next one.